The sea is a vast, salt-stained graveyard, and it is the loneliest place on God's green earth. We've spent enough time in the hold talking about the rot, the lice, and the shared filth-encrusted ropes. We've peeled back the skin to see the scurvy and the mercury poisoning. But even a man who is rotten from the inside out, even a man who hasn't seen a friendly face in a year of raiding, needs something to hold on to when the gale screams through the rigging and the black abyss of the Atlantic opens up beneath the hull.
Welcome back to the archives. I'm Charon, and today we're going to talk about the one thing the movies never dare to touch. They'll show you a pirate's greed. They'll show you his cruelty, but they will never show you his heart. Or, more accurately, the brutal, pragmatic, and deeply intimate way he guarded it. Today, we're talking about Matelotage, the pirate marriage.
To understand Matelotage, you have to forget everything you know about modern romance. This wasn't about flowers and sunset walks. This was about survival in a world that wanted you dead every single hour of the day. The word comes from the French matelot, meaning sailor, but the root is deeper. It's mat, like the piece of fabric you sleep on. A matelotage was, quite literally, a bond between two men who shared a mat, a life and a death. In the golden age of piracy, the ship's articles, the laws of the vessel, almost always had a strict rule. No women allowed. If a man brought a woman on board disguised as a boy, the penalty was death. Why? Not because pirates were holy men, but because women were chaos. On a ship of 100 desperate, violent men, a single woman was a powder keg. One look, one favor, and the crew would tear itself apart in a bloody civil war over her. So the ship was a monastery of outlaws. But men aren't built for total isolation. They are social animals, even the ones with a price on their heads. Enter the Matelote. Imagine the contract. It wasn't recorded by a priest in a cathedral. It was whispered in the dark of the hold, or written in a blood-smudged ledger. Two men would pledge themselves to one another. They became a single economic and legal unit. If they captured a Spanish galleon and brought up chests of silver, the Matelotes didn't just take their individual shares. They pooled them. They shared their gold, their clothes, their food, and their weapons. If one man lost his musket in a boarding action, his matelot gave him his own. If one man was too sick with the flux to stand, his matelot did his work for him, hauling ropes until his own hands bled, just so his partner wouldn't be voted useless by the crew and marooned. This was the logistics of loyalty. On a pirate ship, you had no king, no country, and no family. Your parents thought you were dead, and the law wanted to ensure you were. The only person in the entire world who cared if you woke up the next morning was your matelot. Think about the physical reality of it. We've talked about the hammocks, slung so close that you breathe the sweat of the man next to you. In a matelotage, these two men slept together. In the freezing damp of a North Atlantic winter,
when the wood was wet and the wind cut through the canvas like a knife. The only heat you had was the body of your partner. It was a warmth that kept you from the blue death of hypothermia. They were the only two people in a world of violence who were allowed to be vulnerable.
But the true grit of Matelotage appeared in the smoke of battle. When the Jolly Roger was raised and the ship pulled alongside a merchantman. When the air was filled with the screams of dying men and the thunder of cannons, the Matelots stood back to back. This wasn't just poetic, it was tactical. In a boarding party, you couldn't watch your own rear. You trusted your Matelot to be your eyes. If a cutlass was swinging for your neck from the shadows, it was your partner who parried it.
They were each other's shields. To lose a matelot in battle wasn't just a grief. It was the loss of half your own body. And then there was the inheritance. This is where the pragmatic cynicism of the pirate shines through. Many matelotages included a death pact. If one partner died, whether by lead, rope, or rot, the survivor inherited everything. The gold, the clothes, the shared chest, even the man's share of future loot. In a world where the state seized a dead man's assets and the family never saw a penny, matelotage was the first form of life insurance.
It was a way to ensure that the wealth you'd bled for stayed with the person you actually cared about. Now, I know what you're asking. Was it sexual? The historians have spent 300 years trying to sanitize this. They call it intimate friendship, tactical bonding. But let's look at the reality. These were men who lived in extreme deprivation. They were outlaws who had rejected the morality of the church and the state. In the dark of the hold, away from the eyes of the civilized world, the boundaries of what we call sexuality simply didn't exist in the same way. For some, it was a brotherhood of blood. For others, it was a full marriage in every sense of the word.
They shared beds, they shared lives, and they shared a bond that was often more stable than any land-based marriage of the time. Take the case of the famous pirates Robert Culliford and John Swan. When Culliford was captured, he didn't beg for his life or his gold. He begged for Swan. The records show an intensity of devotion that transcends simple friendship. These men were willing to go to the gallows for one another.
But Matelotage wasn't always a peaceful union. Jealousy is a human poison, and it didn't stay on land. If a pirate felt his Matelot was spending too much time with another man, or if he felt the pool of gold was being cheated, it ended in a sandbar duel. Two men, a pistol and a cutlass, settling the divorce in the only way pirates knew how.
And what happened when they hit port? This is where the tension peaked. A pirate ship in port was a week of madness. Rum, music, and the ladies of the night. Often, the Matelotage would survive even this. There are accounts of Matelots sharing the same woman in port, or the two men moving into a boarding house together to keep their unit intact. They were outcasts among outcasts. Even in the lawless streets of Tortuga or Nassau, a pirate and his Matelot were a team.
But as the Golden Age began to fade, and the Royal Navy began to tighten the noose around the Caribbean, Matelotage became a target. The authorities saw it as a sign of the pirates' moral degeneracy.
They didn't just want to hang the men for theft. They wanted to erase the social structures they had built. They wanted to prove that pirates were just animals, incapable of love or loyalty. But the records tell a different story. They tell of men who, in the face of the noose, refused to testify against their partners. Men who died holding hands on the scaffold.
Why does this matter? Because it strips away the last layer of the Disney pirate. They weren't just lone wolves looking for gold. They were humans seeking an anchor in a storm that never ended. They created a society where the only thing that mattered was the man standing next to you. They built a system of disability insurance, inheritance, and mutual defense out of the sheer necessity of the logistics of suffering.
Imagine the silence of the ship after a major battle. The deck is being scrubbed of blood. The surgeon's saw is quiet. And in the corner of the deck, a man is sitting over a body. He isn't looking for gold in the pockets. He's taking a small ring or a piece of carved bone from the dead man's neck, the token of their Matelotage. He's the only one who will remember that man's name. He's the only one who will tell the story of how he lived.
The pirate life was a countdown. We've established that. But Matelotage was the only thing that made the ticking of the clock bearable. It was the warmth in the black.
But don't let the talk of loyalty fool you into thinking the pirate ship was a place of peace. Even with a partner at your back, you were still living in a wooden box that felt like a prison. And when you weren't fighting the Navy or the Spanish, you were fighting the ship itself. Specifically, you were fighting the walls. You see, the movies show you the spacious captain's cabins with the maps and the wine, but they never show you where the other 99 men went when the sun went down. If you think the seats of ease were a nightmare, wait until you hear the logistics of how 100 men slept in a space smaller than your modern kitchen, where the air was so thick it could choke a dog, and the floor was a moving carpet of vermin.
We've talked about who they loved, but next time, we're gonna talk about how they survived the crush. We're gonna look at the terrifying geometry of the pirate hold and the secret, claustrophobic habits of men who lived their entire lives in the dark. Stay on the wood, friends. It's the only thing keeping you from falling into the black. And keep your Matelote close. The sea doesn't care about your loneliness, but the man next to you just might. The wind is shifting. I can hear the wood groaning under the weight of the night. It's time to douse the lantern. But the archives are never truly closed. The shadows of the Brothers of the Coast are still there, back to back, waiting for the dawn that most of them would never see. Until the tide turns again. Stay on the wood. Stay on the wood.